Hi, I'm John DiArmo with the Coquille Sword Group, and today we're talking about the shashka. We'll be looking at the tools that we will be using in the training going forward. Now, unfortunately for us in the West, quality shashka are simply not available. The stuff that can easily be purchased out of Russia is generally sort of a low tourist grade or quite crudely constructed, and the shashka that are being produced by Western-friendly companies such as Paul Chan or Windlass Armories are simply just not up to snuff. They are not good enough. So, for this video, we will be using a Purple Heart Armory, one of their PVC shashka trainers, to talk about the tool, its shape, and its sort of different parts of it. So, let's dive right in. So, what is the shashka? The shashka is a one-handed, guardless saber. It has a small quillinless bolster, generally with a very slight rest for the forefinger. As some people see that there's no guard and imagine that is like an instant invitation to have your hand cut off. These people don't know what they don't know. So let's leave it there. On the back half, and the part of the shashka that is generally most recognizable, there is a large asymmetrical pommel. Now this pommel on the back end often has a sort of set of ears, much like a yataghan. Now I have heard so many myths as to what purpose those ears serve. Everything from it mimics the bone joints in the body because it's another joint in your hand, to being used as a rest for a rifle, to like it was used like so that you can use your hand like an atlatl to throw it. I mean, just stuff it's simply not very plausible and realistic. That being said, I haven't heard, and I do not know of a purpose for them that does make sense. So we'll just take it as a piece of bizarre cultural heritage, right? If you are watching this video and you happen to know the real purpose for them and have some kind of, verifiable proof, go ahead and leave me a comment in the comments below, of course, and we'll all learn something. Now, the hilt itself is typically constructed in one of three ways, two traditional ways and one sort of military way. The oldest forms, the tang, comes to about here and is square cut off, and it is overlaid with either wood or bone or horn. A slightly more modern way is to where the tang will be quite thin and curved in, and it will be inserted into a hollow metal handle, often silver. The handle cavity will then be filled with cutler cement, which is a kind of primitive epoxy made from a mixture of pitch and other materials. The most modern version of the hilt construction has a tang that comes all the way through and sort of brass bolster and pommel and wooden grip that are slid on in succession, and then a bolt is used to tighten it on the bottom. This method is the one that is most commonly commercially available, and modern practitioners seem to prefer it because the construction among all three types in present day is quite poor, and at least with the latter, you can do some monkey business, right? Tighten it up, change the parts out for higher quality ones. It gives you a little bit of repair option where the others do not. The saber itself varies a little bit in weight. The Soviet wartime models were 2 pounds and up. The Cossack models and, the Caucasian models are less than 2 pounds. For our purposes, we're looking for lighter. It does not take a lot of weight to get the job done, especially with the blade profile and the way that the saber is used. It generates quite a lot of force, so you don't need to have that extra weight to create more force. Right? The blade is almost universally right at about 30 inches. They tend to either be half or a third unsharpened. Now, unsharpened does not mean like there's a large step, but rather they just haven't been sharpened, right? There's still an edge. On some later models, the last quarter or third will have a false edge on the back. The false-edged tips tend to have their point sort of in the center, whereas the single-edged versions will have their point at the far end, similar to a katana. They are quite wide, having very little taper, very little distal taper. However, they are quite thin, and they do have taper in this direction. Right. The shashka, like the katana, is worn edge up on the left side of the body by 2 points, up here and up here. And it is worn from a baldric, kind of a leather sash that secures it. Now, older shashka scabbards encompass the handle all the way up to the pommel. While those of the Russian military and the Don Cossacks come flush to the bolster. Either is fine. I've heard some people say that the older models, rain can build up inside. It seems plausible, right? It seems like, yeah, that could happen. But if it was a problem, I can't see that they wouldn't just change it within the cultures that used it for, hundreds of years before the Cossacks and the Russians adopted it. But weirder things have happened. So, where do we buy training tools, right? Traditionally, the Cossacks will use lengths of hazel or similar wood, cut to the length of their shashka, often with a little bit of steam bent curve put into it to mimic the slight curve of the saber. If you want something a little bit nicer, I suggest the Purple Heart ones, right? They're inexpensive. They run about $35 last time I checked. They're quite robust. We have beat these things pretty thoroughly and haven't really damaged them. Now, they come from Purple Heart in fairly rough condition. There's a lot of machine marks left on them, and they will have a wrist loop, which I don't know why they're doing that. It's not a thing. But you can take it off. The handle's wrapped in paracord I find the wrapping to be sort of chintzy and weak, so I take it off and redo it. But the benefit of a trainer like this, whose base piece is so well made, is that you can adapt it, you can change it without sort of compromise or a lot of initial startup expense. So these are quite nice, and I send most of my students to get them. Now, if you feel that you just absolutely need a shashka, a metal sword to train with, because you like cutting your clothes and yourself in the beginning, Natalia Kopolov and Andrei Karmov on Facebook, who can be reached at Cossack Sword or Sistema Siberian Cossack. Both of them have connections with Russian sword makers who are making shashka specifically for practitioners, that are reasonably budgeted and designed so that you can train with them reasonably well. And those are probably the best options for getting a metal sword. But honestly, until you've practiced for like a year or two, there's not really a benefit to getting a metal sword, right? But I understand that it's cool to have, right? So that's about it for the tools that we're going to be using. Next, we will go into the basics of some of the principles and probably the beginning of Flankerovkov. So, as always, if you want to understand this work, you have to pick up a sword and go train.